The Ignition News. Let's have a high energy show today, okay? I know it's been pretty heavy, and I know there's obviously a lot going on, but resistance requires effort, and effort requires energy. So let us remember that we are, in fact, the American resistance. I'm so glad that you're with us, and it's important for us in moments like this to remind ourselves that we're in it for the long game. I don't know if you've ever done a marathon. It's not as fun as they say. Just I want to throw that out there. I mean, back when I was younger, I really enjoyed running, but now it catches up with you. Anyways, it is in fact a marathon. We are just rounding up the corner. We're only on like mile 2 right now. Fighting fascism, and this particular version of fascism is a long effort. So we need to have pace ourselves. We need to have energy. We need to be ready for the long-term fight. It's important that you remember that on days when it feels, tough. But today is not one of those days. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ignition News. We're streaming live now on Spotify, Twitch, YouTube. Yes, YouTube. We are also on Substack and TikTok. If you're ever on TikTok, enjoy yourself while you can. We love to get those account violations on TikTok, I guess, because TikTok believes that telling factual truth about information which is true is a community guidelines violation for spreading misinformation. What a fun time we live in. It's amazing. So let me start off with a few things. Let's kick it off with some lighthearted information about today. February 21st, 26th. Oh, I'm back. All right, February 21st, 2026. In 1804, the first locomotive. The first phone book came out in 1878. Did you know this? The first phone book came out. Do you remember when what's funny about doxing? People always talk about doxing. They used to hand every year they would come, someone would drop a huge doxing book on your front doorstep that was a giant book of everyone's name and address. And you could look by name and address. The white pages and the yellow pages. The yellow pages were for business. This is a foreign concept to people now. But yeah, every year someone would drop this giant, it was the phone book. Everyone had a phone book in your house. And if you needed to know someone's number, you would go, Johnson, David, boom, there's his phone number. And now we freak out about doxing. They used to drop a giant dox book on your doorstep every year. We've come a long way. The Washington Monument was officially dedicated in 1885. Nixon went to China in 1972. It is International Mother Language Day. It's National Sticky Bun Day, not to be confused with National Sticky Buns Day, which is a separate holiday. It's World Pangolin Day. And I've got a quick question. Why do journalists always carry a pencil? Well, that is in case they need to draw their own conclusions. Oof. Why did the investigative TikTok journalist stay in bed? Because he needed to go undercover. Okay. Let's get into the top stories. Good morning, everyone. Before I get into the actual news, of which I only have 3 short stories today, I do want to talk about 2 things briefly. They're going to sound a little bit diametric, but the first is that we are entering this insanely dangerous period. I saw an article in Der Spiegel from Germany, which was sort of an outside view looking in on America and asking the question, why can't Americans see that they are heading and barreling towards this fascism? After the death of Renee Good, Alex Preddy, after the militarized ICE presence on the streets, and of course, our cognitively declining, power-hungry president. It was this very good article that I recommend you reading. It's on Der Spiegel. It's a German outlet. The Germans would know, yes? And it was asking this question, rather astonishingly. It was really like, why can't the American people understand what's happening? Why can't they see what is happening in their own country? And it's a very good read. So it did remind me, of course, that even on days like today, when we bring energy to the fight and we bring the weaponization of our joy to the fight, that there are vast swaths of the American people who have no fucking idea what's happening. Number one, they don't know what's happening. Number two, if they do know what's happening, they're putting their head down, which is kind of disgraceful, in my view. I talked about this before, and I'm going to talk about this as often as I can, although the actual word is not true. You'll have to stick with me for the hyperbole. There is a German word for the Germans in 1933 to 1935, 1945, who put their heads down, who went to work every day, who saw the tanks rolling through, who saw the cattle cars with human beings and said, oh, this is just the way that it is. They're taking them to a better place, who saw the smoke billowing from what they told themselves were factories in places like Dachau, whose husbands went to work in mysterious jobs, who delivered the mail, who made the cars, and who did nothing. The people who said, I don't do politics. I don't do politics. The word for them is Nazi. Being complicit is its own form of violence, its own form of doing something. Doing nothing is doing something. It is allowing this to advance. It is allowing this to proceed. I saw a brief lecture by someone, don't know how I feel about this guy, Ryan Holiday. I sometimes like Ryan, sometimes I don't. Sometimes he's a bit too dramatic for me. But Ryan Holiday was talking about how in Austin, they were making Valentine's Day cards for children in ICE facilities. That is hyper normalization. Just think about that for a second. This Ryan Holiday, he's an author. He's a wealthy man, pretty famous speaker. A wealthy white man, famous speaker. Oh, who's calling me during the show? Don't call me during the show. I was making a point. White man, famous speaker, talking about making Valentine's Day cards for children in ICE facilities. ICE facilities where they feed rotten food that has worms in it, where they are malnourished, where they are not educating these children. You cannot deny that this is happening, but you can do something. And the second part of it, the diametric part of that conversation, what I wanted to tell you today is, even though we are at this perilous moment, and I'm going to ramp this up a little bit, the Supreme Court yesterday obviously struck down the president's tariffs. The Supreme Court found a set of balls, or at least 6 of them did. Good for them. But the tariffs were the most powerful weapon that this president had to exert his fascism, because he could threaten companies, he could threaten entire states, he could threaten entire economies, and of course other countries with these weapons called a tariff. And when the Supreme Court took that weapon away from him, and we'll talk about this in a second, when the Supreme Court took that weapon away from him, he is forced to utilize another weapon, which is fear. And we are approaching that moment where the president will have to do something dramatic, as he always does, and he will. But what I'm going to kick it off to before I get into the key news stories today is the following. These people are absolute fucking clowns. If we're going to be fighting fascism, if we're going to be going up against the greatest battle of democracy in your lifetime, and let me be clear, this is the greatest battle in your lifetime. You are in it right now. You are either fighting fascism or you are a fascist. There is nothing else. And if anybody tells you anything else, they are pretending. You either fight fascism now or you are complicit in its rise. There is no gray line. And my first challenge for you today is to stop pretending that there is a gray line. Stop pretending and stop letting other people pretend as well. Stop letting them hide in the fictionary gray line. There is no gray line. You are either fighting fascism now or you are enabling its rise. But the good thing about this is that we are fighting these amateur clowns, these D- students, the worst of the worst. This administration is not filled with competent, talented people. The people pushing this fascism are the worst. They're stupid, they're uneducated, they're not talented, they are not coordinated, they're constantly they only seek 2 things. The tepid approval of an old man who is not cognitively all there, and is getting worse and worse. And second to that is their own self-effusive praise about themselves. That's the only thing they care about. And so when one thinks and looks at what is happening in America, one realizes the eventual outcome of all this could well be full-fledged Christian nationalist fascism. But the vehicle for which it arrives is a clown car. The vehicle that this arrives in is a clown car. Do not forget that. Do not forget it. Now, if that isn't inspirational, I don't know what else to tell you. Let's talk about today's stories. Good morning, everyone. I want to take a brief second to please ask you to follow Ignite. Ooh, my brain today. To follow the Ignition News on your favorite platform, Spotify, Substack, Apple Podcast, or YouTube. Please follow us there. So let's get into the top stories today. Story number 1. ICE agents keep shooting themselves. Not a joke. This is not a joke. We've been able to uncover some documents through Freedom of Information. In 2 days, 3 ICE agents in training shot themselves. Let's be clear about what training is supposed to do, by the way. It is supposed to be a controlled environment where you get yourself educated, trained, and get ready to go out into the outside world. And so what's happening is they're hiring bozos. And these bozos were holstering their weapons and they fucking shot themselves. 3 times in 48 hours. That is a massive endemic failure of the system. All 3 agents were treated and released. The incident, by the way, only came to light because of these Freedom of Information requests. But what this tells us is they are training so quickly, so recklessly, and so foolishly, and they are hiring people who are not qualified for this type of work. Do you want to know how many ICE agents they have hired since January? Or they announced this in January? 12,000 ICE agents have been hired. The entire agency is being flooded with new people, new weapons, new tasers, and the oversight, the training, the rigor, the quality is just not there. It's proof positive, and it's just proof positive. This is a supercharged weapon. This is a supercharged weapon heading into our communities. 12,000 people, a force of 20,000 at least, right? When you rush and build up a paramilitary force, when you pour billions of dollars into this, and you tell them that they're the tip of the spear of this administration, and then you let it expand faster than they can train themselves, people get hurt. People get hurt. This is why we saw what we saw. And the crazy thing, the thing I would articulate to you, the agent who shot Alex Preddy, the agent who shot Renee Good, these were not new recruits. These were people in some instances who have been with the agency for over a decade. Those people who have been here for a decade making this critical mistake, killing an American citizen on the street for exercising their First Amendment. Those are the people that have been there for 10 years. Imagine what the people in training right now, being rushed through their 47 days of training. Imagine the chaos that is going to be brought to our streets. And I know a lot of people have Schadenfreude. You hear a story like this and you say, whatever you want to say. Here on the Ignition News, we believe every life is important. And I believe it's unnecessary for these ICE agents to have shot themselves in the leg. But I believe the fault of that lies on this administration for hiring people not capable of doing the job, for hiring too many, for not improving their training. But let us just be clear. We can get into the weeds about training, not training, how many agents did we hire. The only solution is simple. You cannot out-train this violence. You cannot out-train this weaponization of law enforcement. You can out-train this cruelty. You cannot out-train people who want to go to the streets and hurt people. The only thing we need to train is we need to train our congressional representatives 2 words. Our congressional representatives need to sit down in front of one of those little do 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 do. In the following scenario, what would you do? Sit them down in front of a web-based training, one simple module. Hello, congressional representative. Welcome to today's training. Today, we're going to talk about what to do with ICE. Our first and only question today, after you watch these videos of these agents unleashing unnecessary violence on our street, is the following. You're faced with a congressional vote about appropriations on how to handle ICE. You have two options. Number one, continue providing reckless amounts of funding to this violent agency, which is not meeting its charter and is being used as a masked agent of terror for the president. Or number two, abolish ICE. The only training that needs to happen is training your representatives that they will either abolish ICE or they will be replaced. We will elect someone with a set of balls who will abolish ICE. I tried. I'm sorry. That just came to me. It didn't come the way I wanted it to. It was a good effort. It was a valiant effort. We are overcomplicating this. Abolish ICE. My next story, briefly, you saw that the Supreme Court overruled the president's tariffs. He said you can't do that. Of course, this baby man went out on television and announced that he would, in fact, implement tariffs. I would spend normally a little bit more time on this. Perhaps we'll talk about this in the future. But in less than 24 hours, he announced on Truth Social that he was raising the tariff from first 10 to then 15%. 15% is the maximum that Section 122 allows him to do. This is a provision of the 1974 Trade Act that allows the president to impose temporary tariffs, surcharges of up to 15%. It's the legal standard. The reason for this would be because there are, quote, large and serious balance of payment deficits threatening the US dollar, which there aren't. So he's trying to circumvent the Supreme Court. And again, we'll talk more about this in a second. But the reality is this Section 122 can only last for 150 days. So either Congress does something about this, preferably now, but within 150 days, or we will replace you with someone that will. And I don't know if you're paying attention to this, but there are powerful forces on the alt-right. You can't say their name while streaming on this platform, but there's a gay kid that streams in his basement in Chicago. And he's telling people not to vote. Republicans, that is. His little army. But this is not without consequence. This is not without consequence. As I told you at the beginning of the show, fascism arrives to the United States, but it arrives in a clown car. The fallout of the clown car, when the clowns get out of their tiny little vehicle, is significant. Let me tell you about what's happening in Tennessee. In the state of Tennessee, our final story today, Republican lawmakers have introduced a bill, HB 577 bill, Senate Bill 738. This would allow the state to charge a woman with first-degree murder for having an abortion. And in Tennessee, first-degree murder is punishable by life imprisonment, life without parole, or in certain cases, the death penalty. So hear me when I say to you that in Tennessee, they are going to make it a death penalty to have an abortion. If it passes and signs, prosecutors would have the authority to charge a woman who obtains an abortion with fetal homicide. The same penalty as any other homicide in the state. As of yesterday, the amendment had not yet been filed, but the bill has been referred to the House Population Health Subcommittee, and it is not yet on the calendar to be voted. However, you should not breathe easy about this. The mere fact that they are openly in a government-elected body discussing this is not a fringe proposal. It has significant support. The lesson here, like everything else, is that the fascists lie to us. They have lied, they will lie, they will continue to lie. Let's leave it up to the states. Roe v. Wade. When left up to the states, it will become more and more and more extreme. Tennessee already has, by the way, one of the strictest abortion bans in the country ever since 2022. Doctors in Tennessee face criminal charges for performing procedures that any physician just a decade ago would have considered standard medical care. And in Georgia and Texas and Indiana, what has happened is women have died. I don't know if we have any people from Tennessee that listen to the show. I hope we do. But part of our larger charter, our larger goal here is quite simple: to build 1,000 leaders in 1,000 different communities. And if we don't have someone in Tennessee who's part of the Rebel Radio Network, who listens to the Ignition News or joins us here on Rebel Radio, I sure hope we find someone. Because we need pockets of resistance in every corner of this country, in every city, in every state, whether it's a red state or a blue dot in a red state or a purple square in a blue county. We need to grow this resistance. We need to grow our action. And we need to help shine a light for these people. There's someone, no doubt, a woman in Tennessee right now. She's not pregnant yet. But someday, one way, that may happen. And if we do nothing, if things like this continue, that woman who has hopes and dreams, who grew up just like you did, maybe, do you remember those little pizza cards when you would read books in the summer? And you'd punch out the little cards and you would go and you get a free pizza if you read a lot of books. She probably did that or something like that. The presidential fitness test in school. How many pull-ups can you do? Went to prom. Mowed lawns. Sold lemonade in the summer. Had Valentine's Day, a first kiss. First boyfriend. First car. Went to school. Maybe dropped out of college because she couldn't afford it. Went to go work somewhere, went to go work at her dad's business. Maybe one day she was driving home late at night, thinking about that first kiss or that prom date, or thinking about maybe, just maybe, saying hello to the guy across the street. Maybe she should ask him out on a date. She's driving home. Someone pulls in front of her, flashes their lights. She stops. And before she knows it, she's violently ripped out of her car and raped on the side of the road. And then maybe she becomes pregnant from this horrible action, this horrible thing that happened. After all of those things, whether that was getting books from or getting pizza from reading books, to your first kiss, your first date, your first job, the tragedy and happiness of life, the metaphor to what happens to that woman and what is happening to our country, if you can't see them, they are identical. And now, if we do nothing, that woman seeks an abortion and then becomes, in Tennessee, a murderer. After all of that, these things sound abstract. They sound simple until you face what is actually happening. And for every one woman that happens to, there are 1,000 more just like it. Maybe much more. So when we fight for liberation, when we fight to free this country of these people who seek to control us, it is easy to get caught up in your story, your life, your books, your first date, your first kiss, your first job. But the person you don't know, who you will never meet, who's probably sitting somewhere doing something completely unrelated to that and is certainly not watching my show right now, they are just as much of a human being as you are. They're just as raw in terms of their connectivity to this tissue of life. the hope, the joy, the fear, the pain, the sadness, but most especially the joy. I do not fight fascism because fascism makes me angry, but it does. I do not fight fascism because fascism seeks to oppress. I do not fight fascism because fascism is the dangerous spread of Christian nationalist authoritarianism in the United States of America, because it is. I do not fight fascism for just any one of those reasons. I fundamentally fight fascism because it is the biggest threat to our collective joy, our collective ability to experience this very short time that we all have together with each other. So I'll end where I started. This is a long fight. It is a multi-decade fight. And there are days when we are going to be tired. There are days when we're going to be exhausted. But we have to have the energy. And most importantly, we have to know what we're fighting for. That's the show, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. It's February 21st, 2026.